All right, thanks for joining, everyone. I'm going to throw it over to Mark for some opening remarks here, and you can go ahead and raise your hands in the meantime.
Hi, everybody. Not one for opening statements. Very often, I usually like to go right to the Q&A, but I felt like today uh, warrants a little bit of reflection, a little bit of perspective, and some thoughts before we get into the call, as well as a lot of thank yous. Um, my first thought upon getting the email last night that contained the national letter of exemption was pretty simply 670 days. 670 days. Like, that's how long it's been since we've played a home game, a true home game. And I think more than that, that the meaning of a home game, the meaning of what home is, that home is Toronto, home is Canada, for our organization, for our players, was more crystal clear than it probably ever has been. A greater sense of appreciation, a greater sense of meaning and what it can be potentially to a competitive, our competitive drive towards a playoff spot. And really just grateful that we've got a chance to be back in front of our fans and part of recovery for the city, the province, and the country. So, it was a great moment. It's been an incredibly challenging at times, year and a half, 2 years. But I think one that's going to be an important part of who we are as a team and an organization moving forward, and one that will be a part of our championship foundation moving forward as well. Want to shift to some thank yous. I feel a little bit like I'm on an award show here, and I will tell you that there is no way I'm going to be able to hit every single person that was integral to us collaborating with us to get to this point. But there were a number of officials, certainly across public health in the city, the province, and the country, that were incredibly helpful, and in governmental bodies as well. First and foremost has always been the health and safety of our country and the people in the city of Toronto. And I think that was, as we worked to try to find a plan to come home, it was working with the experts to ensure that we were doing that. Along the way, obviously, we've had second homes in Dunedin, and incredibly appreciative and grateful for our long-term relationship there, as well, to the city and Pinellas County as well. And then a very special relationship in Buffalo that starts with Bob and Mindy Rich, the Bison's organization, Mike Buchkowski and others, the city of Buffalo, Erie County, the state of New York. We're going to leave here having, I think, built a bond with the fans here that we have never had before to this level. We're going to leave here knowing that the player development conditions here are better than they've ever been, and knowing that the roots of a long-term relationship have been reinforced, cemented, and will have greater meaning, historic meaning, than they've ever had in the past. Shifting to the city, the Mayor Tory has been incredibly helpful, as has Toronto Public Health. Premier Ford has been supported from day one, as has the Ministry of Health for the province. Dr. New with PHAC, has been a core part of our interactions and trying to determine, along with many other people at PHAC, and how we can help develop a cross-border travel plan that was safe for both this year and last year. Numerous people, but I want to mention Matt Stickney and Rick Thies from the Prime Minister's office, and numerous other people, obviously, the Minister of Immigration, the Minister of Health, and their chiefs of staff and their offices as well. And Anouk Karunaratne, I have to mention him from our office, who, like me, has added, areas in our job description that we never thought we have in government relations. And Anouk really spearheaded quite a bit that we went through over this season. Want to shift to Q&A now. I would say that I'm not going to get into granular topics on our plan, or or aspects of consideration. Certainly willing to kind of touch on top line issues there. But we will follow up next week with as much information as you want, as it relates to how we're going to navigate cross-border travel, what additional protocols will be in place, and what kind of considerations are going to be we agreed upon, with public health and governmental bodies. So those are my top line thoughts, but I'm certainly happy and look forward to kind of answering questions with a little more, being able to provide a little more definitive answers than I've been able to do with you over the past year and a half. So I'll turn it over to questions.
All right, we'll start it here with Arden. Go ahead, Arden.
Hey, Mark. I don't know if this is too granular, but under, I guess, step 3 of the province's reopening plan, you can have 15,000 spectators at an outdoor sporting event. Is the Rogers Center an outdoor facility? How does that work with a retractable roof?
Yeah, we've worked closely with the Ministry of Sport, Lisa McLeod, and the province, and we've been approved as to 15,000 capacity. That'll be our attendance. Again, not going to get into all the details, but we're comfortable that we're going to leave the roof open in every opportunity we possibly can, except for inclement weather. In those cases, there'll still be openings, increased circulation, and we have a good plan in place for that as well.
And I think that since the last time baseball's played there, you've had new turf put in and a new sound system. I mean, are there any other kind of upgrades or retrofits that have happened since there was last baseball at the building?
Yeah, it's hard to even remember everything that's been done because it's been so long. But yeah, the biggest one will obviously be new turf. That we're excited for our players to see. For our fans, I think fans will be able to notice that right away as well. Definitely, our fans will notice the sound system, as will our players. I think the sound system that we replaced was the original one when the building opened, so it's going to be quite a big difference. There are numerous small cosmetic changes on the 100 level concourse, opening it up. That I think will be present. And then probably the biggest one for our players beyond the turf would be brand new batting cages that kind of take it from what I would consider to have been maybe the worst batting cage in Major League Baseball to among the best in-stadium batting cages. So that'll be something that hopefully we'll be able to show on a pregame show or some other time. They'll be pretty spectacular and great opportunity for our players to continue to train and develop.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
All right, just as a reminder, we'll keep it to one question and one follow-up, and we'll go to Ben.
Hey, Mark, thanks for the time. Wondering, when it comes to your opposing teams that are coming in and you have some partially vaccinated or potentially non-vaccinated players, what are the mechanics involved for making sure that they do stay between the hotel and the ballpark?
That borders right on the granular question that I said I wasn't going to spend the time dwelling on today. I prefer to keep it more kind of perspective, what we're thinking about and what we're feeling. And we'll get into all of that next week, what I would answer to you, Ben, and then I'll give you a chance to answer any other question you might want to ask so you don't blow it on that one. But is that, we have a plan that underwent intense scrutiny, with public health, with all governmental bodies that ensures that, we are not jeopardizing anyone, that there'll be a modified quarantine for non-vaccinated visiting players.
Okay, sounds good. And then I'll just follow up with, when it comes to your leadership group and the front office, looking at July 30th, that's a busy day for a couple of reasons, obviously, with the trade deadline, returning to Canada, a lot going on. So just what are the plans, and I know it's still 2 weeks out, but what are the plans from your standpoint to navigate that and approach that as a kind of strategic question for this organization?
Yeah, I mean, our baseball operations group has been working feverishly on, executing a trade deadline plan for quite some time. And our business operation group, regardless of whether we were approved on July 30th or had to look at later dates, was already preparing the building for us to come back July 30th. So it is a lot of work. It has been a lot of work over the past 18 months to create homes in Buffalo, create twice to create in Dunedin as well. So I guess what I'd say, Ben, is that, we've been under immense pressure for quite some time, as have numerous people. We've executed extremely well. Our group has executed incredibly well. And I'm incredibly proud, of what they've done. I have no doubt that they'll pull off a new opener on July 30th. To me, that's going to be small compared to what the efforts it was to create Buffalo, what it's been in 6 weeks, or some of the other changes that had to be done in short order in Dunedin.
For sure. Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Go ahead, Keegan.
Hey, Mark, thank you for doing this with us today. As you move over these next couple of weeks, given that Rogers Center has been closed through this time, what are some of the big lifts for you in terms of moving and then having the stadium ready? Like, what's left in terms of big ticket?
I'd say the biggest things are, getting everything from here across the border, in a timely fashion. That's always a little bit unexpected. We never know what we're going to encounter when we move an entire operation across the border. The biggest one could be players and families, and they're getting their families, their apartments closed up here in the middle of the season. It's the second move for many of them on a personal level during the season. And then the logistics of, we didn't know up until yesterday, Keegan, where we're going to go on sale for ticketing for July 30th. So, was it going to be Buffalo? Was it going to be Toronto? With the capacity there, how are we going to handle that? We have an extensive ticketing plan that we'll, announce in the next couple of days that, certainly takes, most importantly, into account our season ticket holders first and foremost, and then puts the rest of the tickets on sale for the rest of the fans. But, those would probably be the biggest things. And then just the natural things. The building has not been used, had not been cleaned, deep cleaning throughout the building. The branding, was 2 years old. We had to update all the, all the branding and the visuals throughout the building. Just getting ready to play a baseball game when we haven't played one in 670 days, and that building's largely been dormant. That was an extensive effort. Again, one that a lot of people have spent a lot of time working on.
And then knowing it's only been about 24 hours and today's a rainout, but what type of player reaction in terms of guys you've run into, player, coach reaction have you gotten around the ballpark lately? Yeah,
I mean, it's been pretty neat just to see how excited staff are. I mean, I think, there are things you don't think about. We've got a physio that joined us 2 seasons ago who's from Toronto and was excited to finally come home and work and live, with his wife instead of across the country, across, North America, who's never worked a game in Toronto. We've got a new trainer in Drew McDonald, whose, hometown, is Hamilton, and was excited to finally, get to work in the major leagues and get to work, in Toronto, in his country, and in really, his home city team, who's never worked a day there, even though he's been a major league trainer for 2 years. So there's little stories like that, people like that, that I forget about at times, and I see and recognize how excited they are. The players, I think about Marcus Semien, Hyun-jin Ryu, George Springer, players who made a decision to come to the Toronto Blue Jays because Toronto was a big part of that decision. Canada was a big part of that decision. And yet they've never played a game as a home, town player in Rogers Center. There's a lot of excitement. There's some fatigue, there's some relief and a lot of excitement. I think those are kind of the mixture of feelings that we all have.
I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Hey there, Mark.
I'm like,
I want to explore emotions here on both sides. There's a lot of emotions around this. You referenced some of them. July 30th, it's just not going to be a baseball game. I mean, this is going to be a Canadian event, a seminal event. I mean, can you even picture what that's going to be like when the anthem is played? I mean, it's going to be far more than just a baseball game.
I know it's going to be special. And I think the immediate, I'm not someone who tends to think about moments being symbolic or moments being big. I tend to think about the journey more than I do any individual moment. Yet, right after this decision was made, my thoughts did turn to what potentially July 30th could be and what it could mean. I've always kind of felt like baseball's played a role in history, in the recovery from adversity and from challenges, whether it's wars, 9/11, different times. Baseball seems to, have been one of those symbols of continuity, of return to normalcy. And so I really feel like it's going to be a celebratory moment for the country, for the city, one that we're excited to share. One, we're excited for our players to feel, what it means to represent a country and how incredible Toronto is as a city. I think it is one of those moments, it is one of those days, Mike, that's going to actually hold up to the expectations.
And then a little bit on the emotion on this side of it. other than the 3 games against the Yankees, you have had some incredible moments here. I think in the Marlins rally, even Vladdy's home run last night, where the building just erupted. What did it mean to you just to see that you did get, except for those 3 days, you did get the response you wanted here in Buffalo?
I think back to the first half inning played here when Robbie Ray struck out the side, and I had goosebumps listening to the crowd as he came off the mound and came off the field. Because it was really the first time that we felt any sort of home, atmosphere in a long time. I had a great message exchange with Bob and Mindy, Rich yesterday. And I do think that we will all feel like we've been a part of something historic here, Mike. Major League Baseball in Buffalo has been a conversation that's bubbled up, historically from decades ago or, century ago to as recently as not too long ago, but to have been part of something that will always be part of the annals of baseball history in Buffalo, and to have really cemented a special relationship, both professionally and personally, between our organizations, between the people that work in those organizations, and between the fans of Buffalo. I do think it's one that we will have a greater bond. We'll see more people from Buffalo come up and watch us play. And certainly we'll have a great player development facility also as part of that legacy left behind. So appreciative and feel like it's something that won't be forgotten.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, Mark, thanks for doing this. I hope this isn't too granular, kind of relates to what Ben was asking. Did you have to work with the Players Association or opposing teams on any of this, or was all of this just between yourself and government authorities?
No, this was not an easy lift. And it, as I said, when I spoke, I think a couple months ago, this is not a unilateral decision. It wasn't even just a decision between the government, public health, and me and the Blue Jay organization. It involved Major League Baseball, and it did involve the Players Union as well. So, and the Players Union did what unions should do. They took the pulse of the players that they represent, and our players across the board. And regardless of limitations it may place on their lives or their families, wanted to be back in Toronto. And I think visiting players, despite the fact that we made the most of the situation here, also wanted to play in that environment, in that setting. So it involves some compromise, as life has for all of us, in order to be respectful of public health. But it will be a return to home and a return to Major League Baseball in a great environment.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Shai.
Hey, Mark. This may also be a little too granular, but I'll ask it anyways. I'm just wondering, it seemed on Thursday when Dr. New made his comments that you guys had sort of reached a point of no return and it was going to get to yes. But I'm wondering, in the back and forth that you had with government health officials the past week, what was your sense of what you put in place that got you to yes?
Yeah, I'm not going to walk through the details of kind of what the back and forth was. Frankly, the back and forth largely occurred prior, to this week. So this week was more letting things work their way through a bureaucratic system and get sign off from numerous, governmental bodies after the Public Health Board, went through their rigorous process. What I will tell you, Shai, is that, in my mind, it wasn't done until that letter was in my inbox. It's just been too much of a roller coaster over the past, 18 months, too many times that it felt there was a reason to be optimistic, a reason to be pessimistic, that I was hopeful, that my hopes were dashed. That, I've always been a believer that a deal's not done until a deal's done, until it's actually completed, whether that's a trade, a free agent sign, or anything else we're working on. And this probably reinforced that more than any other time in my career.
And just from a financial perspective, Mark, and obviously the priority is getting home. That's obviously the biggest piece of this. But what kind of a difference is there to your bottom line in terms of being able to close out the remaining 30 something 40 games in Toronto versus Buffalo?
Believe it or not, I asked that question for the first time, and our the people that do our ticket modeling we're not able to answer that yet. They're still working on that, which I guess kind of is the best answer to your question. Is financial considerations weren't even a thought. They weren't even part of this, and the magnitude of losses that we have. While we will certainly do a little better moving back, we have done well in Buffalo, better in Buffalo than we did in Dunedin. It won't begin to eclipse the magnitude of losses, that we've incurred over the last 2 seasons. So this is about getting home. This is about being where we should be. This is about, reuniting with our fans. Finances are a tiny to non-existent part of the equation.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
I'm gonna go back to Mike.
Mark Shy asked about the financial. I was going to bring that up, but actually the other point I wanted to ask you is simply about, I know this was all a public health decision, but as it turns out, you do want, from a baseball standpoint, get a critical homestand in Toronto with another Red Sox series. I mean, now that you got through the public health decision and they gave you the okay, just how big is that to have this homestand in Toronto when it was certainly possible it was going to be in Buffalo?
Well, that I left that out of the opening, but I shouldn't have, because as we were walking through the process, Mike, that was monumental. That wasn't small. It's a 10-game homestand on July 30th. That's more than 25% of our remaining games. That's almost 10% of our entire home schedule. So the swing of those 10 games versus having to delay getting back, to me, delaying getting back created more uncertainty about us ever getting back, because I wasn't sure what the players would feel at that point anyway. But to be able to get back in the heat of a race for the playoffs for a crucial 10-game homestand, hopefully after we've added to our team as well, on the day that, the days leading up to that return, to me is about as big a competitive swing, as you could possibly have. So, it was crucial and it was meaningful to try to make it happen July 30th instead of later in the year, if at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Shai.
Hey, Mark. Obviously, you guys were able to sign George Springer, Marcus Semien, and some other, bring back Robbie Ray. So the uncertainty didn't completely tie your hands in free agency. But got to talk to Kevin Gosman this week, and he was saying that one of the factors in his decision was he wasn't sure exactly what he was signing up for if he chose to join you. And assuming that this 2022 begins here without any further restrictions, I'm just wondering, what's your sense of how this may alter things for you guys in the free agent market, and what are some of the challenges that maybe you had to work through last winter trying to sign guys?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it was the uncertainty was a challenge, but I still feel like we were as confidently, as aggressively sold Toronto and sold our circumstance and situation. Part of what we were selling, Shai, was the environment, the culture, the atmosphere, the leadership, the teammates, and the competitiveness of our team. Those things never changed, nor did how the people in this organization that worked so hard to make a positive environment for our players changed. If anything, they went above and beyond, during this time to ensure our players were as comfortable as they could be. But the bond that a player feels with the fans is important to be felt in person, and not through messages, and not through watching in any medium or listening in any medium. So we were lacking that. We were missing that bond, that tie, that connection with our fan base, and ending that uncertainty, creating that understanding, letting the players who made the decision to come here see what an incredible city it is, having them feel what it means to represent more than a city, and having them feel the love and adulation of our fans. That's going to certainly make our jobs easier next offseason.
All right. Thanks again.
Go ahead, Arash.
Hey, Mark, congratulations on everything. You just mentioned a couple answers ago, you said, hopefully we will have added to our team by July 30th, July 31st. What are we looking to add to this team, Mark?
looking to get better. And that's not something that I'm throwing out there casually. I think there's you can look at areas of need, and certainly whether it's defense or bullpen are the ones that kind of the most obvious, but sometimes the biggest impact you can make is not necessarily in those areas. So what I know is that Ross Atkins, Joe Sheehan, Mike Murove, an entire baseball operation have been working tirelessly over the last month. That the next 2 weeks, even with a short, pull away to focus on the draft, are going to represent, a tireless effort to add more talent to this team and to impact our chances to win, not just this year, but beyond. So we'll always balance the fact that we feel like we've got a very good competitive window, not just this year, but beyond. So we're going to be cognizant of that. But, I think the track record has been, we've already added 3 pieces to the bullpen. We'll continue to look for impactful ways to improve our chances to get into the playoffs this year and beyond.
I know you've talked long about this is a sustainable thing. It's not just a one-year deal. How much, though, just returning home after 600 plus days, the fact that you're coming back for a pennant race in August and September, does that change the approach at all? Just the human nature part of it, the fact that you're returning, will you be more aggressive now that you're returning to Toronto in front of a fan base? And I know you said finances aren't a factor, but the fact that there could be October revenues too.
Well, again, I take the financial piece out of that because we've never, the one thing we've enjoyed the entire time is the backing of ownership who said, go and run this operation as if it was a normal circumstance. So it's never been an issue for us. So put that aside. From a human nature perspective, I'm not going to lie that, thinking about ending this story, with an October that we all remember would be the ultimate. How incredible would it be to think about the journey that we've experienced, the uncertainty of last season, playing a 60-game season in Buffalo, playing in 3 different homes, for this season, and finally getting back to the place that we all believe in, care about, and feel a bond and tie to end that with winning the last game, would be maybe one of the greatest baseball stories ever written. So, that's certainly the story I'd like to be a part of.